1692, Salem Village, Massachusetts, a small isolated Puritan community, huddled together against a vast, dark, and unknown wilderness. They believed in a literal physical devil. They believed he lived in that forest, and that he was constantly searching for a way in. In January, inside the home of the village minister, that darkness found its doorway. Soon, other girls in the village began to suffer the same fate, screaming, barking like dogs, their bodies twisting into impossible shapes. A doctor was called. His diagnosis was simple and terrifying. The evil hand is upon them. The events that followed would become known as the Salem Witch Trials, a dark chapter in American history, resulting in 20 executions. For centuries, this has been dismissed as a tragic case of mass hysteria, a perfect storm of religious zeal, political infighting, and superstition. But what if that's not the full story? What if the mass hysteria itself was the anomaly? In this investigation, we will deconstruct the logical explanations, but we will also ask the forbidden question. In their paranoid hunt for the devil, did the Puritans of Salem accidentally stumble upon a genuine, malevolent force they couldn't control? Our story begins in the cold, dark winter of 1692, in the house of Salem Village's minister, Reverend Samuel Parris. Life in Salem was one of hardship, religious extremism, and constant paranoid fear. They lived in a theocracy where sin and crime were the same thing. His 9-year-old daughter, Betty, and 11-year-old niece, Abigail Williams, were the first to fall ill. It started with strange noises. Then they began hiding under furniture, contorting their bodies, and complaining of being pinched and pricked by invisible forces. When Reverend Parris would pray, the girls would scream in agony, as if the holy words were physically burning them. Soon the disease spread. Other girls in the village, like Ann Putnam Jr., began showing the exact same symptoms. The village was terrified. Unable to find a medical cause, the local doctor, William Griggs, delivered his famous and fatal diagnosis. The girls were bewitched. The hunt had begun. The supernatural had been given an official medical stamp of approval. The afflicted girls, now the center of the town's attention, were pressured to answer the most important question. Who is doing this to you? The afflicted girls were now in a position of terrifying power. They pointed their fingers at 3 people. 3 women who represented everything the Puritan society feared and despised. Sarah Good, a homeless beggar who wandered the streets muttering to herself. Sarah Osborne, a social outcast who was fighting over an inheritance. And the third, and most important, Tituba, the Parris family's slave, a woman from the Caribbean who had told the girls tales of magic and voodoo. The 2 Sarahs denied the charges, but Tituba, after days of relentless interrogation, did something that lit the fuse on the entire powder keg. She confessed. And it wasn't a simple confession. It was a vivid, terrifying narrative. She spoke of a dark man who ordered her to hurt the children. She described animal familiars, a black dog, a red cat, and most importantly, she described a book, a devil's book, where she signed her name in blood. She claimed there were other names in the book, other witches in Salem. The town's worst fears were confirmed. Tituba's confession was a get-out-of-jail-free card. She was spared, but in saving herself, she had just condemned everyone else. The floodgates were now open. The afflicted girls, emboldened by Tituba's story, began accusing more and more people. A special court was convened, the Court of Oyer and Terminer, and it made a fatal legal decision. It would allow the use of spectral evidence. This meant a victim's testimony was all that was needed for a conviction. If an afflicted girl claimed a witch's spirit or specter flew across town and attacked her in her bed, the court accepted it as fact. How do you defend yourself against a crime your ghostly double committed while your physical body was asleep in bed? You can't. The trials became a horrifying spectacle. The afflicted girls would writhe and scream in the courtroom, perfectly in sync whenever an accused witch looked at them. So, what was the logical explanation for this madness? Explanation 1. Mass hysteria or mass psychogenic illness, a phenomenon where a group of people, under extreme psychological stress, begin to exhibit real physical symptoms. The girls lived in a repressive, terrified society. Their fits gave them something they never had: power and attention. It became a dark form of celebrity. Explanation 2. A political weapon. Salem Village was in a bitter feud with the wealthier Salem town. Many of the accusers, like the powerful Putnam family, were from the village. Many of the first wealthy people accused, like Rebecca Nurse, were from the town. The trials became a convenient way for old rivals to settle scores, seize property, and eliminate political enemies. The first person executed was Bridget Bishop, a tavern owner who wore colorful clothes and did not fit the Puritan mold. She was an easy target. The madness peaked with Giles Corey, an 81-year-old man who refused to plead innocent or guilty, thus denying the court its power. His punishment was pressing. He was laid in a field and heavy stones were slowly placed on his chest for 2 days. His only recorded words as he was crushed to death were a defiant curse, "More weight." But what if the girls weren't faking? What if the demonic influence was biological? This is the ergot theory. Ergot is a fungus that grows on rye, a staple grain for the Puritans, especially during cold, damp winters. Ergot, when consumed, is a powerful hallucinogen. It's the natural source from which LSD is derived. The symptoms of ergot poisoning: violent convulsions, skin sensations of being pinched or bitten, hallucinations, and temporary paralysis. This theory perfectly explains the girls' physical symptoms. They weren't faking. They were, in effect, on a terrifying, non-stop bad trip. However, the theory isn't perfect. Critics ask, why did the poisoning only seem to affect the young girls, and not the adults or male children in the same households? Which brings us to the final, most unsettling theory, the true anomaly paradigm. We have dismissed the trials as hysteria, but what if the Puritans, in their religious fervor, were right about the source, but wrong about the method? What if the fits were real but not from ergot? What if Tituba's stories of occult rituals weren't just a forced confession, but memories of something she had unleashed? This theory suggests a genuine, malevolent, non-human entity was at play, but it wasn't interested in possessing individuals. It was interesting to the community. It didn't need to possess anyone. It just had to provide a small push, a suggestion. It fed on the existing paranoia, the political feuds, and the religious zeal. In this scenario, the hysteria itself was the demonic entity, a social contagion that became a sentient, destructive force. The devil's true victory wasn't the souls he took, but the community he convinced to destroy itself. The 20 dead were not his victims. They were his trophies. The madness finally broke in late 1692. The afflicted girls, growing too bold, finally accused the wrong person, the wife of the royal governor, Lady Phipps. Outraged, the governor disbanded the court of Oyer and Terminer. He banned spectral evidence and released the remaining prisoners. The trials were over. The aftermath was one of shame. Judge Samuel Sewall, one of the main judges, stood before his church and publicly apologized, asking for forgiveness. Ann Putnam Jr., one of the most prolific accusers, also recanted, claiming she had been deluded by Satan. But for the 20 people who were executed, it was too late. Salem was left a broken, haunted community, a permanent scar on the American psyche. The Anomaly of Salem is a timeless warning. The most dangerous monster is not always the one with claws and horns. It's the one that whispers in our ear, telling us that our neighbor is our enemy and that our fear is righteousness.